You record?
Your letter to us.
Okay,
If
we're recording.
This, we expect a 57% increase in our water and sewer rates.
Well, can you say that one more time?
Good things.
One more. So that, and my water bill's already two hundred.
At it and what she said and in your letter to us. If we go through with this, we can expect a 57% increase in our water and sewer rates.
That's
So
over,
let's,
the good thing is, that's the worst case scenario, overstating it, but it's pretty much what it is.
well, that's at 1.1 billion, you haven't added that extra 150 million at it and what you.
But now That's an overstatement, but that's pretty much what it is. Roughly give or take.
57% increase in your water bill and utilities, is that what they said?
Yes.
Water bill and utilities.
You can say it one more time.
What you said and in your letter to us, if we go through with this, we can expect a 57% increase in our water and sewer rates.
Oh, water and sewer rates.
So
That's over.
let's,
The good thing is, that's the worst case scenario, overstating it, but it's pretty much what it is.
well, that's at 1.1 billion, you haven't had.
So expect that within the next 3 years.
All right, hey, everybody, we are back. Welcome to Inserio. Aida Castillo here, Program Director for Chispa, Texas, reminding y'all to vote. Today's the last day of early voting. Next Tuesday is the election day, so go out, cast your vote, make your voice heard.
Hi, everybody, Isabel Isa for the greater good.
Hi, I'm Blanca.
I'm Deandra Sanchez with the Indigenous Peoples of the Coastal Bend. I'm here.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Steve.
Speaking of voting, did I want to hear what some of the incumbents think about voting?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
let's do it. So, this is from Tuesday's city council meeting.
This is from this past Tuesdays. Yes.
Okay, and this is Michael Hunter.
Yes.
Man, I don't know why he speaks to dead. It's just like, oh, it just makes sense that you're dead.
And I also
You're
want to
right.
mention that they had just come back from like a very long lunch.
Oh, okay.
So, he had no reason to be ugly. After what, like 3 hours, 3 hours of
Yeah.
lunch. That's a great kid for telling his history.
I'm in industry. I've just when we have good projects, I like to push them through because that means we get the opportunity to get more good projects. And you know, Councilman Smith, as much as he is looking forward to running again this time around, we all appreciate his history lessons for 5 minutes of our time. Well, we're missing 4 votes every hour of not waving a sign outside to be back here. So thank you. I think your project's great. It has nothing to do with you. And
He reminds me of like little kids, like when they had all day to do something and then you're waiting like to do like 5 seconds before they need to go to bed or something, and then it's everybody else's fault. That's what that reminded me of.
And it just goes to show, like, their whole thing isn't even about the citizens or, you know, anything like that. They're just priority is getting reelected. That's like #1 priority.
The point of it is like lost already. It's
Yeah.
like they forgot what the point of them is. The point of them there, it's all right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And what good projects?
Yeah.
He was actually speaking about a hydrogen production project that's probably gonna come. Some conglomerate, again, another venture, some guy that's from a different country, I don't know, it was in that meeting.
So is it kind of like that good project, that Bitcoin good project?
Yes,
Is
like that, like deplete your water supply,
Yeah.
bring barely any jobs, pollute, yeah, schemes.
Yeah, schemes, yeah.
Scams, that's what that was,
Tax the electrical grid because, you know, we have so much power.
yeah. Oh, and put it right by a neighborhood, of course,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
this, I mean, and that's one thing, like, they're not really talking about, cause, you know, Michael Hunter talks like the teachers and. You know, the hydrogen takes. It's gonna go by like these gas stock, like, that's what it means. It means, so what they're wanting is like export more. And then the more that they export, the more that they can like process gas, and then it's gonna contribute to these hydrogen hubs, and then with hydrogen comes ammonia. Cause they wanna build like large ammonia plants. in our communities too. And I don't know about y'all, but like, I read the directions and it says like, when you use ammonia. Like, don't be in an enclosed area and all this kind of stuff, because it's not healthy or safe. And they wanna build like large ammonia processing facilities.
I think this is like leading into that, honestly, I'm not real clear on the hydrogen and the ammonia, I don't know, do they go hand in hand?
They're, yeah, like that's like the next step. They're looking at this as like clean technology.
Yeah, oh, they called it green in the meeting, they said that it was, and Paulette was like, this is a good news item. You know, she was real happy about it, like, and I'm just like, I remember this from one of the, you know, I'm always kind of tying it into water, because that's why they're all coming here, not because we're cool. Not because the councilmen are cool, they seem to think that, like, you're coming here because we're cool, and they come here because they're weak. They know, they see weakness there, that's why they let them, you know, build themselves up their image with these projects and everything, because they know that they're weak, they know that they're gonna sell out, that's why they come here for water. And so, but right now that you were explaining the hydrogen, I just remember hearing the port commissioner.
There's an article, in the Wall Street last
Just
week,
birds.
that, making hydrogen was really stripping it out of natural gas.
Yeah.
This legislation makes water that much more competitive with natural gas. So as I've told you in the past personally, whatever you think you need in water, you need to think bigger, because it's gonna happen. There's industry coming here, and the industry that's here is planning on growing. And I don't think there's anything that we're doing at the port level that the EDC has.
And that also brought up another point, you know, kind of this, I don't know if it's an optical illusion of like the port versus the city, because when I looked at the campaign donations or whatever. There's a lot of port commissioners funding our city councilmen, and probably mayor too, so I forgot where I was going with this, but. If he says in that part to them, like, run, little councilman, I mean, saying that, but to paraphrase, run and give me more water, because this is coming and we need it, and and he also said there's a thing that we're doing that the EDC is not aware of. So they all know, they're all in on it. There is no, we need new people in there, just, it really is this idea that, well, these guys are gonna go to bat for the city and these guys are gonna go, it's not like that. It is, they know, they're aware. Now, whether the councilman and the mayor actually read it and actually know, that's a whole other story, but that's how I took that. We need more water and get it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem of.
You know, it's funny that you're saying more water, that we need more water. So while I was in New Mexico, I did a training class with some youth members. And one thing they mentioned was that the state of Texas is suing New Mexico because New Mexico no longer has water to sell them, or, you know, to bring water. Now, the deal in New Mexico, they have industry as well, fracking, a bunch of fracking, and all their rivers are dried up, their water is all capped up, so it's like, you know, this more water thing is like,
it reaches everywhere.
yeah,
It's a
absolutely,
tentacle,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So it's disturbing, you know.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we also have to keep in mind is that. When you look at the industries that want to be here and the industries that get rich off of this. Kind of production, it doesn't translate into better life chances for us. It might give a handful of people some decent jobs. But the reality is that when you think about the costs that are associated with it, like needing more water, like we have to invest in resources to create more water, that's less resources that we can invest in other things. And so we pay indirectly for this. There's more pollution, there's less resources for us, there's less of an imagination about how we can support the quality of life of everybody. And those industries, their owners and their stockholders don't live in our communities. Their kids don't go to our schools. They don't give a fit. Well, I can say that online.
I wasn't a bad word.
But they don't care about like if our students really learn, if any of those things, like it's all about like sucking out the imagination of the people so that we feel grateful that these industries want to come over here. And really, who wants to live by a plant that's gonna be processing pneumonia or
Giving you cancer.
Yeah.
They don't.
Your lungs up,
yeah,
asthma, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And then for your children, while being pregnant, your children are already affected, you know what I mean? They're already contaminated with these chemicals in the air, so it's a lot, and yeah, this is not
This is not good.
Yeah, and really depleting the water while they do it. I mean, when you hear Greg Smith say like 47% increase, like
57.
57% increase, you know, and it reminded me the other day when my water was brown and I was using like bottled water for something and my husband was like, here, just use bottled water, and I was like, oh, I'm not, you know, he's like, it's probably gonna cost the same anyway. You know, and then you think about it, it's like, yeah, I mean, 57%, like you're gonna be paying like bottled water prices to wash yourself, like it's really.
professional,
Are you ready?
yeah.
Oh, we're all just checking.
Yeah.
You gonna join us on the chair?
Going back to what you were saying about the like, how much is actually left in the community and does it really like benefit the community? I was looking because, you know, GPISD is considering the tax abatement for Chenier. And so I was looking at the elementary school where Chenier is located and just looking at some of their stuff. I used to be a teacher, so there's things that you can look at the report card to see what, and it was really interesting to see, and I don't know if I can show the camera that, but in that school, where that school is, 65.4% of the students enrolled are economically disadvantaged. So it's kind of like, where's the prosperity from that? You know, yeah, they come and put up their new building and have their little whatever ribbon cutting. But everyone in the town still economically depressed, you know, and disadvantaged. So it's kind of like,
It's like so that 65.4, that's 2 out of every 3 people. And here's the thing about, like, when we think about poverty and the way that poverty is measured in the United States. When they came up with this formula to identify poor people, it wasn't about people being just able to meet their basic needs and then not having money left over. Actually, the way that the government conceptualizes poverty is, and in order to be defined, you're not earning enough money to meet your basic needs. And so whatever money's coming in, you're having to, you know, kind of negotiate things, and you might have enough calories, but you're not eating the right food for a healthy diet. And that's, so, I mean, we need to think about those types of things when we're, you know, imagining what kind of life that we want. And if you look at what's happening in Corpus, there are areas, and it's going to spread to other spaces. But there are areas within our city limits that cannot be developed because of pipelines under the land. Like, realtors don't want to mess with them. The government doesn't want to mess with them. And so they're just lying fallow. And I mean, we don't even know if our soil is healthy enough to actually do anything with that. And so, if you look at this thing, it's like, why is this happening? And the solution for our residents or for the council members has been to run away from the older parts of our city and then just do the build, what actually makes the problems worse, because then there's more infrastructure to maintain. And then I was like, I'm sorry, Dorothy, but like our park, we had this wonderful park that we adopted, and we had the Dia de los Muertos, and it was so beautiful. I just thank you for doing that for us. We needed that, and it was glorious. But when we have been trying to work with the city, and the group has been very intentional about following the chain of command and recognizing that our Parks and Rec department is really stretched. But for months, we've been trying to go back, like, we've been just trying to get engagement. So that we can get basic things, light at the park. Benches, we had to push for trash can. And there's just, and we're gonna get it, but we have to pay for it. Like, we had to pay for the irrigation. We put in our time and I love it, you know, I wish I could do it more. But the fact that we don't have resources so that people can enjoy the park, and we were standing outside with our phones, or, you know, Elida's Cheese Spot provided like solar powered lights for us, which still isn't enough, but we don't have enough because we let them do whatever they want, and they get tax abatements, industrial district agreements. You know, the damage they cause to us doesn't even factor in. I'm on a soapbox, I'm sorry, but like, it doesn't even factor in, like, their cost isn't even part of like our imagination around public safety. Public safety is police and firefighters. But public safety is having clean air, clean water.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, having roads that you can drive on and not worry about like having to be like this. Now,
Or even the construction that's still out there, you know,
yeah,
what the heck, you know, like, it should have been done by now. What's going on? What's the holdup? And it looks like to me that at the end of the day, it's profit over people for them. And it's like, okay, we're gonna do these projects and have this community rebuilt, and then boom, they're starting to do it. Halfway in, it stopped.
mhm,
You know why is it stopped for?
yeah,
You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you got paid, right?
Yeah.
And you have your money in your pockets, right? But look at our community, look at our city at that, you know, so it's yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, very true.
An issue of safety,
Yeah.
yeah, my son was learning how to drive, and like, I was like really scared, because we're in Annabelle. And he was coming to Del Mar, and I'm like, somebody who's learning how to drive, that's a really bad road, that's
Yeah.
really bad, it's not safe.
yeah,
It is not safe, the way Crosstown comes up,
yeah.
you know, and I know not everybody is an inexperienced driver or whatever, but it's dangerous for experienced drivers.
Yeah.
People have already died there.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I wanted to mention something,
Mhm.
like going back on what you were talking about as far as the parks and the light. And all these things, these amenities that aren't in the park. I was just speaking with Jenna Jasta, who's doing the permaculture designing for the other part with us.
Mhm.
And talking about how the plans are, I mean, the parks are planned by somebody.
Mm.
And to have them planned in a way that they don't have lighting, that they don't have seating, that they don't have shade is intentional. It's intentional because what parks do is they create a space where people from the community feel safe to go, and they want to participate with this space. But if you don't have these amenities, you don't want to be there. It's just a flat, hot, open spot where people don't want to interact. And so I think that maybe this is set up in this way within the city, because then we're not inviting particular types of people to not be in that space. Because instead of creating like structures that like work on mental health and drug addiction and all these things, and giving some of the money that they receive from these industries, or even having those industries recognize that that might be a problem within our community, or something that we need assistance with, so we can actually help our community members, all of them across the board, that gets neglected. And so instead of trying to help those people, they become enemies.
Right,
And so we plan our city for enemies,
right,
instead of planning it to have everyone that's a part that lives here be incorporated and thought about. And so that would actually build community, and it would create bridges to the people that have been left behind,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And create the spaces that are like, no, this is for everybody. And we have intentionally put water and benches and
Yeah.
shade because we want you to be here. We want to know why you're in the situation that you're in, and we want to know how we can create systems that are better so that you aren't being left behind.
right, and I kind of building on that too, I was thinking about how actually the way that our whole the economy works, and that especially around here, the way that our business as usual, our normal is actually pathological. Like, to live in these spaces where there's pollution, where you're scared, where you're stressed, where you're under resourced, where you send your kids to school and there's gonna be a lockdown or there's a high turnover rate. Like, if anything, what it shows is that this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, it works for a really small handful of people who are in positions of power. And what they do is work really hard to make us drink the Kool-Aid that what's good for them is good for us, and it's not good for us, right? And if you don't like poor people, if you don't like people sleeping on park benches, if you don't like, people who seem to be unstable, then we have to ask ourselves, like, what's producing that?
Yeah.
Everything else is just a band-aid, right? And Chevron, Cheniere, Exxon, Valero, those are multi-billion-dollar corporations. They make billions of dollars of profits per quarter.
Yep.
We don't need to live like this. And if they're gonna be here, then they need to pay their fair share so that there can be resources. And like, there's a really great book called Palaces for the People, where it talks about the importance of public spaces, and the public spaces are the palaces, right? So that the better that the public spaces are for everybody, it actually benefits everyone. And so that's, for me, one of the things in terms of like why for the greater good, I think is so important in the advocating for everyone needs quality resources, because if we all have quality public resources, then we actually need less money at the personal level to have a fulfilling, thriving life, because I mean, being at the park, eating, listening to music, being a participant with the ceremony, or just kind of even just being there to bear witness, man, that sense of community was so beautiful, and oh, it felt so good.
And it was so nice to see like community, like from the neighborhood coming out, and like, they felt like this is what it should be about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is so true. And like these jobs that they say they're bringing in, it's because they're saying they want to create these for the young people, that they don't want people to be leaving, they want to create these. But one, it doesn't employ locals. A lot of times these, facilities are built elsewhere, they're just assembled here. Two, like most of the time people come here, like they're not gonna hire locally. They're gonna like, no, we want people that we can train. And so they say we have these programs at Del Mar, but even at those programs, they're like, you're not gonna find a job here. Like, you're gonna have to go elsewhere. And like, it also takes me to like what's happening right now with my nephew's school, like an elementary school. Like the Port of Corpus Christi just started like this portable learning lab, because they want to teach STEM to like young kids. But it's not even about like, hey, we want to educate you so that you're able to have better opportunities. This is what they say. The Port of Corpus Christi's commitment to support STEM education and STEM careers in order to develop the workforce of tomorrow. The Port of Corpus Christi supports more than 98,000 jobs, lies probably, they just make up whatever numbers as they go, in the South Texas Coastal Bend region in various fields. This investment will help provide students with skills to more readily compete for jobs and fill the needs of this region's current labor demand. So they're not wanting to provide opportunities for these kids so that they don't have to work in these industries that are laborious, that are backbreaking and pay like.
And they're on top of
Yeah.
that, who knows if
And
they're
they're
dangerous to that,
Yeah.
because of with the cancer or asthma or the ammonia that's in the air already, who knows
Yeah.
if they're gonna make it.
Yeah.
So.
And so I asked my nephew, he just turned 11 like this weekend, and I'm like, do you want to work at a refinery? And he's like, no, I don't want, he every time he passes by a refinery, like he grabs my phone and he'll take pictures of the flares. Even my 5-year-old niece is doing that now too. Like they take pictures of the flares and they're like, this is ugly. They don't want this. They don't want to see more of this. They want to be able to go out to the park and play and, have those opportunities. Like, they're just like, what is this?
It's the oldest trick in the book to foist something on an area, on people, on a community. It's the oldest trick in the book. You make them need you to the point that they're willing to go mine their own resources. It's what happened in New Mexico, like their mining history that's in when they're done. The market for silver, whatever we're done, and it's happening here. It's the exact same. It's how they do it in third world countries. That's
they just depress them to the point where the little kids will go in a mine and risk their life because that job is all they have.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here, just because they're bringing you a plastic porta potty and they're giving you a hat at $1 day, doesn't mean that they're not doing the exact same thing. It's the same business model,
Yeah.
you know?
And then, oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was gonna say, they're essentially targeting children right now.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
what they're doing is like, they're in some sense, I don't know, it's brainwashing, but it's like, they keep hammering this information into them, like, do this with this. With science, technology, engineering, and math, you can get a high-paying job in these industries, instead of saying, here's this information. What do you want to do with it?
Yep.
You can be a geologist, you can work with the earth and be an agriculturalist, you could do anything. What are your values? What values exist within you already that you want to pursue into your adulthood?
Yeah.
They don't teach those values at all when you're going to school, because they don't want you to be able to make up your mind and say, I'm not gonna go in the industry, I'm not gonna do that work. You get out of high school and you're immediately like, I need work, I need a job, I need money, I need a car. And so the first thing that you see, that jobs everywhere, is industry jobs.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the opportunity to think of change and want to see better for your future, you know?
Right,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
On the west side.
Yeah.
Our school was the tech school, welding, mechanic, I went in carnivore now that I'm gonna be a mechanic. Why did I think that? When I had a great education, right? I had good grades. I could have done more, but in my mind, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do probably. For some reason, something's telling me. It was like, yeah, there's a school that you pass every day that's telling you what your people where you live are what you're good for.
You know, and I was actually you made me think about too, like when you look at people who don't, well, just as a backdrop too, like my daughter right now is in college and it's a huge, it's super expensive. And so, yeah, I was driving and I know that she's in part trying to think about what can she do for her career, but also like how to pay for her college, that's gonna come out of college and like, so that she can cover that and also exist. And it's like, you know, there are people whose families are super affluent and they are pursuing things like writing and the arts and that stuff is so important to us, like, you know, like literature and music. And if you think about how knowledge was passed before there was writing, it was storytelling. And, you know, theater is really good for people's mental health because you're doing something and building something together. And then when you perform, you're bringing people from the community and your family to watch the performance. It's a communal act. And those kinds of things are art and music and literature. Like all of that is so important. They send their kids to these beautiful schools. Like beautiful spaces are so important. Green spaces are so important for our health and well-being. And we're worried about jobs. And it's like
bills and money.
yes. And we don't, and the thing is, we don't have to be, if we have the imagination, that we can have something else, right? But we've got to have that imagination and that awareness. And you're right, the schools aren't going to teach you that because it's a pipeline.
Yep.
You know, they used to call it the K-12 pipeline, and then the university started saying K-16. I was like, I hate that. And it was work, not, you know, like citizenship, like, you know, being a member of the community. Yeah. And we could, like, the jobs could be there for, you know, more real sustainable, not like an endless extraction process, the way they think of desalination, but living in harmony with, right? And asking ourselves, do we really need to be using single-use plastics or, right? Like I was thinking like clothing swaps. That would be, like we should be having clothing swaps where people come together, because I hate the idea of just like throwing stuff away. It kills me to, you know? So I'm like, who needs the guitar too? And that's like a not market-based economy, but still meeting people's needs.
Yeah, like a swap meet,
Yeah,
swapping
just-
seeds, swapping clothes, swapping
Yes.
all sorts of like,
yeah.
All my,
ideas.
Mhm.
all my son ever wanted to do was have a big truck.
A big shot. Oh.
And like, how do I tell them like, pursue that dream and follow that, but tell me one person who's living that, you know, that. Isn't gonna struggle with this resale stuff, you know, it's sad.
And the dredging, like, we sell the dredging, dredging's already messing up our aquatic system.
Just in my lifetime, it's very different. Up there by my parents, I remember seeing, I mean, crap, you couldn't go out there without shoes because you were gonna. You were, the crowd were gonna get you, they were, and it's not like that anymore, it's in my life, yeah, they're gone, they're gone.
It's just really sad, and like going back to this whole thing being by design. So when my sister read, you know, first she signed it, and I'm like, why are you signing the permission slip for this? Like lab. And then I was like, did you read this? Because it says they may be exposed to chemicals, they're gonna be learning all this, but you're waiving all rights to any kind of compensation, you know, that they're not liable for any injuries, death, anything like that. It's all on the participants, you know, backs. And so they're targeting like lower income areas, because like, you know, Taft is not a high income area. They're targeting these areas, these students, and then they're like, well, if your child dies or if they're exposed to it, sorry, we're not liable for that because you signed this contract.
You didn't read it.
And the hypocrisy of like, we're valuing education and we're gonna do this program, but we're gonna have our leases with tax abatements
Yeah.
and
We're gonna
Right.
struggle.
depressed
Yeah.
property values and, right?
Because they won't read,
Yeah.
you know, because they won't read it, and you know what, they're gonna think their children are learning.
Yeah.
And it's not,
Yeah.
that's not the case.
It's not. And so the teacher, like my nephew was the only one who was not participating, and then so. Like the teacher was gonna contact my sister. To try to get,
Convincing. Wow.
yeah, convince her to like, you know, allow him to participate.
Well, you know, when they
And it-
brought Mike Murphy in, he said that to the council, that we're gonna start going into the schools to promote peace out and some of the stuff that we're doing. And I was like, I better not find it in the school, I better not find out you're pushing these on the school, but they probably already are. I mean, they had like a whole,
When my daughter was, my oldest daughter, she's 30 now, or she's gonna be 37. But I remember when she was in middle school, they had like a science project, but again, it's like. It's not, it was, she brought a Chips Ahoy cookie home, and her task was to dig out the chocolate chunks, right? And so, but the lesson was about mining. And I was like, oh, I was so mortified, because I was like, this is one of those, because it also talked about how you could do it carefully and not damage a blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is predating the fact that the chocolate chips are part of the cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like trying to tell my kid like why this is problematic, and like I sound like the nut, but because that socialization process of accepting that the earth and water is something to take and consume, not something to coexist with, that it you know it was just such
Like
a
programming them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just information unbiased.
Yes.
information, It's information that they're hoping they can manipulate
Yep,
these
yep.
people, these children, into going into a very specific field.
yeah.
And to only give them one side of the story, so that when we concerned people who are thinking about the bigger picture of how this will affect the future, then we sound like we're unhinged, like
Yeah.
what is wrong with those
Yeah.
people?
Right.
How they see how this is gonna be beneficial, how we need this, and I'm like, look, like 200 years of look past when
Mr. Nose,
humans, yeah,
Mr. Nose.
when humans initially existed, do we have any of this? Do we have plastic? Do we have oil? Do we have any of this? No, but we made it.
Yeah, and
You know?
there was an article I read a long time ago from archaeologists, and they talked about how the remains of humans prior to agriculture were uninteresting because they were so similar. And it was only when you had like the inequality, then you started to see like, oh, there were some that were taller. There were some that had all their teeth. There were other ones that were like plagued with evidence of disease and chronic illnesses. And I was like, that is not good. That's actually like, and not to overtly like romanticize things, but it goes back to that idea, like, we have taken it as normal that so many people have cancer. We have taken it as normal that so many people have asthma.
Yep.
We have taken it as normal that there are learning disabilities,
Mhm.
right? And even like neurodiversity, like we've turned that into, I mean, the disabilities, some of it's environmental, but another part of like learning disabilities is that you're trying to teach kids in a structure that we as a people, we learned next to each other and interacting with each other. And as we moved along, you know, we shared information that allow people to sustain themselves in areas for thousands of years.
Yeah,
Like there's knowledge there.
I'm thinking like how vastly different could society be if we didn't accept the status quo as it is?
Yeah.
If we wouldn't have accepted that this is the way that we will
Yeah.
fuel an economy is with this particular type of fuel or energy, how about we imagine something else and we follow through with thinking outside of whatever people were saying, oh, this is what it's gonna be. You know,
Yeah.
and even like architecture and agriculture and all of these different forms of existing, how different they could be if we wouldn't have allowed like bureaucracy and like
Yeah.
certain things say like, oh, this is the way everything must be,
Right.
you know?
So my daughter, I'm sorry, like I'm.
Eh,
It just made me think like my daughter, my oldest is working, she works at UTSA, she's now working for this woman. Who is like, they have a STEM program there and they've been going to visiting schools. And so my daughter called me the other day, super excited. And she was just like, you know, the woman had asked the students about like, who wants to go into STEM, and they were going to schools that were predominantly like Latinos. And that like nobody said anything. And then the woman started talking. She's Latina too, was also like, was at NASA, but she was like, it's like, it's in our people to be engineers. Like corn was engineered, and it was like this beautiful thing where you're like, God, you don't even, like, we're so absent from like the traditional, like, or the mainstream curriculum that like that was in it, like she was able to like show the kids that actually,
That's in our blood.
yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, and she talked about, that how it couldn't, like, people had to be very intentional and like watch and learn and know. And oh, it was so beautiful. I thought, you know what, that's there, we have that knowledge in our culture. We just don't recognize it as it. Like, I was thinking about my mom would tell, like, when we were sick, we used to always tease her. Because like when we were sick, she'd go, did you drink enough water? You haven't, drink some more water, go to sleep. And so it was like, are you thirsty, or drink water and go to bed. And so we didn't know this isn't great, but she recently passed of cancer. But when she was first diagnosed with cancer, it was like devastating. But our response to her was, did you drink water? But water's the first medicine. Like when you go back, like, oh my God, there's so many things that are wrong that if you're like hydrated and
It changes the whole game.
and that's knowledge in our culture that we don't appreciate as knowledge because it's like not written in the textbooks. And,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have a
The
PhD
teachers
or
don't talk about it as much.
Yeah.
Like they should be,
That's, I was arguing with this lady, which I still can't stop feeling, but I was arguing with this lady and she was saying, well, the port brings so many things, they do so much for the community. She's like, they, like the programs they have at the aquarium, and I'm like, my son, I've always felt like he kind of, it's just in his blood to be a little wild, like he's like the one that was like always barefoot, like he's not a talker, like he's just, and like, it's like, but my kid doesn't want to go see the fish in the aquarium. He doesn't want to go do that shit. He doesn't want to go pay $15 to walk around and read plaques about. He wants to be in the water. That's where he wants to learn. His classroom is there. His classroom is not in the aquarium, the man-made thing. Like it's not the same experience for him. And like you said, it's if it could be balanced to where people could choose, then yeah, but they don't come in like that, letting it's in exchange for we gotta kill that for this, and so it's like, well, that doesn't work. You know, and there was no getting through to this lady, but it was like, you know. Some people don't need that. They don't need to go into the building and need to walk through the little thing and read the plaques to like know that there's crab and that, I mean, my son can tell you like everything that he sees, everything that he finds, like. He was like drawing fish prints when he was little, like that's where he, like, who he is before society or anything, and it's like, why does that have to die? Like,
Yeah, you're right.
and so it was kind of like, I think the port could shove those, no, I'm just kidding. Those little workshops, like, we don't wanna go there, and not only that, like, I used to take my kids back when I was like really desensitized and like, didn't really know what was going on. I used to take my kids, and there was always kind of this feeling like, oh, thank you, let me come to Dollar Day, you know, and it's like. While you come and take everything, the kind of like the idea that like you need them, that's like, you
Yeah,
know, and like.
that's the great part about being able to come together and recognize what is failing us as a community,
Yeah.
is to say, well, we're adaptable. Like, we can recognize what's not working, and we have a vision, we have imagination. So how are we gonna get into those schools and say, like, you don't have to go work in industry, here are some other things, these are jobs we have created for ourselves, because we refuse to go into these fields that these people are trying to make us go into. You don't have to do that. Like with Melissa, I was like, you can create a composting program at the school, you can create a job for yourself. If it isn't there, you're gonna make it, you're gonna make it be there. So like, we get the chance now, we see this, we don't want these children to be preyed upon, we want a better future for them. We know our values are coming from love and truth and understanding, right? So we're building a future for them, and maybe like, we're gonna start going to these schools and talking and giving these children options. We're gonna give them the truth.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's expand their imagination.
Yes.
You know, because that's the main thing, imagination. If you can imagine, you know, yourself growing up into being a artist or you know, a singer, whatever, then along the way, there's gonna create more imagination, and who knows, you could become an environmentalist or you know, just a marine biologist or whatever, you know. So I think that that is the main thing, going to schools and breaking that program that they are, you know, getting, you know, these kids to think about. That's my main thing, is the kids, because, you know, I think about when I was growing up, you know, and I, you know, wanted to be a mechanic as well, or I wanted to, you know, work with engineers and stuff like that. But deep down inside, I really had a connection to the beach, to you know, the wildlife, you know, and I just thought that, no, that's not gonna be it. I gotta do this because that's where the money is. And, you know, now look, I broke out of that, you know, because I started to see the big picture, you know, and the future that's right after me, you know, and it's a big calling for me, so.
And socially,
Yeah.
like when I would take my kids to those things, I would get like little flashbacks of when I was little, you know, because it was always, those things are always like manned and organized by like a certain generation and a certain race. And you know, they just have a way of just giving you that look, like you don't belong here. And like, you know, it just got to where like, we don't want to do this shit, like we don't like this, like, you know, he doesn't need to come through this for you to like, he's not a receptacle for you to just deposit, like that kid's grown up in the water. And he probably knows a whole lot more about that just from experience and living it than, you know, than you.
Showing
You know, like,
pictures or
Yeah.
only reading scripts from
Yeah.
books, you know what I mean?
and you can't really know that because, and it's like, you know, yeah, he can discover things on his own and without people telling him, you know, figure it out. So, yeah, that's.
Yeah, and I think about how like we're social beings. It's part, like, we can't survive out of infancy without people being willing to sacrifice themselves for us, you know, and I think that with the culture, the dominant culture that exists right now, is there's such this emphasis on individualism and competition, and that actually feeds like anxiety and it makes distance from us, right? So because I, you know, like, I mean, I cannot tell you how wonderful I felt, you know, and it was just hanging out, having some food, being able to take some time out to enjoy each other's company. And like, look at how beautiful our park has become.
Yep.
And like, that's what we like, in community, like, we're happy, in community, I'm me, you know?
Yeah.
And that energy and like, hearing the people sing and listening to their, and my daughter was like, when y'all were doing the drumming, she's like, I felt it in my, like, my body, in my heart, mom, I was like, yeah.
Because your spirit's being called to it. It's a reminder of what you originally came from.
Yeah.
So when you hear it, it's like your spirit remembers it, like it wakes up and it's like, holy.
I remember my
What?
cousins used to come in the summer, they live on the border, they live in Matamoros, and they would come in the summer and stay with us, and like, everything here is really nice to them, you know, they live in a third world country. And I remember one of my cousins, after about like 2 weeks in, she'd be like, I really miss. And she, you know, we like go walking around, I grew up in Portland, she's like, everything's really nice here, she's like, but. Man, I'm like, you don't see people here.
Yeah.
She's like, I wanna see the elotero, I wanna see. You know, the panadero, like. Like, it's nice here and everything, but like, yeah, at home, and that was like what my escape from GP, where, you know, it was like. Cause my mom would go down there like every weekend, and it was like, the minute you got there, it was like, that's. Looking back, that's what made it so much fun, like you know, people didn't have a lot and people lived with what you need, you know, I do remember the water, like. You know, it was like a little trickle, like you hauled water, but like. You were just so happy because, and that's what it was, that you just like could go anywhere, like if there was community, there was like. People, you saw people everywhere, like there was, you know what I mean, and it was just. She was like the first person that made me see that, like as a little kid, because we're just walking around our neighborhood, like, and yeah, everybody had like a nice house, you know, and like, but she'd be like, I mean, like, it's a little boring here, you know.
And here, like, what we're seeing right now is like that on a small scale, like them taking away access to the parks, access to that community. But then on a larger scale, we're seeing it like with our neighborhoods, what they did to Hillcrest. Now what they're doing with Bravery, like they're building a highway that's gonna bypass these small towns to starve them. So that they continue this dependence, and people are like, well, I don't have anything here, I'm gonna leave. Because that land is valuable to industry.
Yeah,
They're not planning these cities with us in mind, they're planning these areas with these industries in mind.
Yeah.
And it's the land that's valuable, not the paper money that they're gonna come give you, and you're not gonna have anything.
Yes, yeah, because what they're sucking out is important to the land. We need those chemicals, we need that oil in the land to stay there, because that's how our grass is gonna grow, and that's how everything is gonna, you know, look clean and good. But they're sucking the shit out of it, sorry,
Yeah.
and it's drying up everything, and it's ruining the soil, and then it spreads, it spreads, so now what? You
And
know,
once you sold it, you sold it.
yeah,
You can't ever go back and change the price for what you sold something.
Yep.
Ever.
And that's what happened with Hillcrest, they forced people to give up their homes.
Yeah.
They promised them a price and they're like, it was fair value for what their homes were worth.
but they're not realizing
You know,
that
but they're not.
it's not irreversible. It's not gonna go back to normal. Once it's done, that's it. I mean, we're gonna lose a lot, you know, and that's. I don't know about y'all, but that's the scary thing.
Yeah.
You know, that is.
And that's what, like, in that article, that's what some of the folks from Hillcrest who, you know, didn't move out of the neighborhood, they're like, we missed that. You know, when we're in Hillcrest, we knew who our neighbors were.
Yeah.
We had that like fabric here, like I'm in a new neighborhood, but I don't know anybody.
Right.
That is, you just nailed it, like when I would go down there. Like I was just the little cousin that would come visit and everyone knew me, everyone was like, you're the little girl that comes. You know, from Corpus, and you're the little girl that's your grandma, and that, like, everyone, and that was like just so. And now I realize it, when you were little, you didn't know why it was so cool to go down there, but it was just was, and you're exactly right, everyone knew, like, you're Doña whatever's. Little girl, and you're like, and you can just run around like everywhere, and it was just. Yeah, and you're right now it's like, it's all weird in the neighborhood, everybody's just like.
there is something really cool that I have been noticing though as I canvas through the city. That I'm like, I'm trying to pick up information about people, right? Because we're trying to learn about each other in our community and what makes us tick. And there's something that I've noticed about so many in the neighborhood, where the park is, where Wilmot is, everybody grows plants.
Yeah.
Everybody has either fruit trees or flowers or something, and I'm just like, these are our people. We still have that connection to the land and to the plant, and if we can like build our community on that connection, and we still have like, we're gonna be able to find each other again.
Yeah.
We're gonna be able to make that connection with each other and like, hey, you wanna meet with me, talk about planting some seeds, whatever, talk about the future, meet me at the park.
Yeah.
This is our space. And now we are coming up with ideas and sharing, and we're not letting them tell us, like, it's better to just be your individual self and do whatever. No, because we obviously share this connection, and the connection is the earth and
Yeah.
the plants and the need to, because like, if you already feel that inside of you, the plants and like nurturing the earth in that way, then that means like you want to take care of the bigger picture, because you're
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
recognize,
Yeah.
oh, I need clean
Yeah.
water and air and soil for my plants. So it makes total sense
Yeah.
that we don't want desal or any more pollution or any of this, because we are stewards.
Yeah.
Right, so we're sharing that stewardship with these neighbors that we don't know their names yet, but we're gonna learn them,
Yeah.
and they're gonna find us.
Yeah.
We're all.
And that's the other thing too, like in terms of like when we're talking about, we get, some of the stuff has been super heavy and. Like, and sometimes I recognize that some people check out because it can
They
be
have to.
overwhelming thinking about this stuff. But also like even in our workspaces, in our regular workspaces, I know for me personally, where I had the job that I thought I wanted, and it was giving me heart palpitations. I was scared to teach what I thought people needed to teach, to learn. I was scared when I would do work, I still did in the community, but I would be home anxious about what I thought was right and necessary. And it's like, but that was normal, and that's just part of work. You know? No, you don't need to do that. And you know, and you can move, you can leave that. And I did. And I'm grateful for it. But that goes back to this other thing, like doing the unknown and starting a new path is scary.
Yeah.
But like we can do it. And if you think about all of those lessons that they give at the schools and all the commercials that happen and all of the like signs, it's because they know they have to keep working to build the facade, because they know it's a facade and they know that facade can be pierced. And so the other world is possible, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So
That's like one of the coolest things about nature is like, if you ever go to these like zones where one ecosystem meets another one, it's not like cut off and then like there's this new one. There's this in between space that is the most biodiverse. So like there's this side with them, right? And there's this other side that is an unknown for us, and we have fear. So that in between space that we're in right now, this is the most diverse. This is the place where we have the most opportunity to start dreaming up what we want to create in the future. Because we're not just here to complain. We're not just here to talk about all the problems. We're here to imagine the future for this place. And we want to hear all the voices that have a vision for this home, like this space too, you know?
And that's what they try to teach us, right? They try to teach us as, don't rely on your community. You have to lift yourself up by the bootstraps, you know, teach a man how to fish and you'll feed them for life, when they're like killing our fish, you know, okay. But like, you're like, oh no, individualism. Like, no, you can't rely on anybody else. But for all of these industries, they all have to rely on each other.
yes. And they rely on us.
They rely on us. They're like, no, folks, yeah.
Yeah.
So
They need
water, so that's why they need desal. You know, for hydrogen, they need gas, they need fracking. For plastics, they need gas. For all it's all like one to another to
They
another.
need a
They all,
workforce.
they need a workforce, they need politicians,
need
they need all
land.
this, so it's okay for them to rely on one
Yes.
another and to push politicians
The
and to
middleman,
lobby.
the middleman is the politician.
But,
You're the one-
oh, no,
You're the
you can't
one
rely
that's
on
gonna
your
give us that.
Don't trust your neighbor, don't trust the person.
In fact, report them.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Yeah, but there's a time, we're in this time now that we need each other, that as a
311
community,
isn't really for them to come fix your pipes.
No.
311 is not for that.
Mhm.
So quit calling 311 snitches.
What are you saying, Dean?
Oh, no,
Now's the
I'm
time.
saying,
Sorry.
yeah, no,
No,
you're good, you're good. We're in a time now that we definitely need to count on each other. We definitely need to come together as a community and rise against this, and it's not only for you and us, but it's for your children. That is the main thing. It's for your children. Look at your children and see, are they gonna be able to make it the rest of their lives here in Corpus Christi? Is the land gonna be good here in Corpus Christi? Is the water gonna be good for them in Corpus Christi? Like, that is the main thing. It is scary, and that's what I was telling you. Sometimes I get anxiety of that, because I see what the hell's going on, and getting the community together, getting them to understand, hey, we need to stand up. We need to come together, and despite if you don't like this person or not, hey, your child is gonna be the one that's gonna be affected by it. So let's all, yeah.
So like when I asked my nephew, like, and I was like, what do you want? Like, you don't wanna work in a refinery, what is it that you wanna do? And he's like, well, for now, he's like, I don't know, I want like a community garden. I wanna plant one of those, like, he's like, I want, he's like, I wanna do these things. And so that's the thing, they're not talking to the kids, but the kids see a future for themselves where they're not relying on this, like their future's not being told like this is your future. They want to create their own future. So I'm so like grateful for the greater good, for like that providing that amazing space. Like Dorothy and Dee and IPCB, the Indigenous Peoples of the Coast of Bend, for like teaching us, like, these are like, let's go back to our values. This is the way you do it. And for, because like our future is in our hands, not in what they tell us, like, is what we need to rely on. It's like they don't create our future, right? Like, what does Nike say? Like, write your future or whatever. Like, our future is not written by industry. Our future is written by ours.
Oh my gosh,
That they want us to learn in school is blacks. They don't want to tell you the truth.
So when I was when you think about, or one of the things that I have been thinking about too is that idea of our culture has often been presented, and I know our culture is diverse and it's not monolithic, but like, and for me, right, that like being Mexican and being family oriented and being community oriented has always been presented as like this thing to overcome in order to be successful, or there's low educational attainment because like there's these obligations, and it's like, man, that's actually the source of our strength. That's the source of our resiliency, right? That's where our knowledge base is, and we've been taught to devalue that and to see it as an efficiency, not as a strength. But that really is where the strength of like existence and continuity is in that stuff. And it's like when we can learn that and how it manifests itself in all of our like the cultural diversity that does exist. I mean, that's right there. Like, you don't need to know what you want to be. Like, I have a nephew that's getting ready to graduate, and he's like, I don't know, I'm just kind of, and I said, well, what are you gonna do? Like we're so, it's so intense. Like
Let them
explore, discover, like go to the park. And I just like, I mean, and commercials are proselytizing and propaganda and evangelism. They're teaching consumerism and like just what we do. I don't know. It's just I feel like we don't recognize that all that other stuff is indoctrination, is propaganda for one way of living and thinking. But there's another one that can be fulfilling right here where we're at. Right.
And y'all guys are just community people, right? There's nothing, you're just community people. Just like I am nobody. Let's imagine what, all you out there, we can come together, we're for sure, so that, all right. Love you guys. I'm sorry.
Oh, you can cut it, right?
Yeah, let me.
You don't ever just put it. Yeah, I see.